Welcome to the second season of Viking Radio Theatre. My name is Walter Lutsch, I'm the production director, and I'll be introducing our scripts and the cast and crew. If this is your first time tuning into our show, you're in for a special treat. Viking Radio Theatre is a monthly program written, produced, acted, and recorded at Western Washington University in Bellingham. On March 6th, we hosted the 1940s Mystery Dinner Night at the Fairhaven Public Library. Along with Foul Play, the Murder Mystery Club, and Swing Kids, we put on a wonderful night of classic entertainment, dancing, and intrigue. The whole night was themed as the gala opening of a new radio station during World War II, staffed by the cast and crew of Viking Radio Theatre. During dinner, we took to the stage with a live 1940s themed episode. It's those stories that we're airing for you this episode. So if you weren't able to make it to the 1940s Mystery Dinner Night, here's your chance to enjoy at least a portion of it. As always, we want to showcase the amazing talent of Western students and the local community. So if you're interested in being a part of our show, shoot us an email at vikingradiotheatre@gmail.com. Don't forget that you can visit us on Facebook or listen to the program at any time on our YouTube channel. And now, without further ado, the fictional first episode of the Viking Radio Theatre Hour. Good evening once again to our live audience and all of you listening at home. This is the Viking Radio Theatre Hour, bringing you thrilling adventure, romance, and suspense every night at 7:30. For our first segment, The Daring Adventures of Liz Baxter, Private Investigator. Episode 1, The Photograph and the Cobbler.
It seemed like a run-of-the-mill case of theft. I would have told the kid to just go to the police, but he was skittish and didn't want them involved. As for me, work was a little slow. It seemed like a quick buck. David Gold, his name was. He was trying to make it as a photographer, made money on the side, shooting for newspaper stories and weddings. But now, he was in hot water and cooking fast.
Thank you for seeing me, Miss Baxter.
Of course. Tell me what happened.
I didn't report the break-in to the police because it didn't seem like a big deal. I don't live in the best part of town, and it's not like they would have caught whoever did it. Pretty much all my neighbors have had something stolen. I consider myself lucky that I went so long without anything happening.
And when was the break-in?
Last Tuesday.
Do you know what went missing?
Not much. Some money I had in my desk, some undeveloped film. They didn't get into my darkroom, thank goodness. And I had everything of real value in my safe.
Are you sure that was all?
Some of my files with all the photographs in them. Nothing important that I was going to use. Besides, I can always reprint them. The negatives were in my darkroom.
I see. If you were so unconcerned about the break-in, why come to me?
I started to get a feeling a couple days ago, the prickling on the back of your neck. I felt like I was being followed. Now I'm sure of it. There's this man, tall, dark brown hair. He's been following me around. I wasn't sure at first, though it might be a coincidence, but I saw him yesterday at a wedding I was shooting. He wasn't a guest, he was watching me.
Were you followed here?
No, I'm sure of it. Can you help me?
For a price.
I can pay, Miss Baxter. I just want to feel safe again.
All right, mister. Give me your keys. I need to search your apartment.
Can I stay here while you're out? I don't want the man to find me.
Of course, Mr. Gold. I won't be long.
Thanks.
The kid was right. His building was in a rough part of town. It was a look the other way and keep your lips tight kind of neighborhood. It almost made me start to doubt the connection between the theft and the man following Gold, but my gut told me there was no way that it was a coincidence. It would have been better if he hadn't cleaned up the mess. I couldn't make head or tail of what was different. It seemed like a random break-in, until I got to the darkroom. There was no way any petty crook worth his salt would pass up the opportunity to steal the equipment in there. I got a hunch and grabbed some of the negatives in the darkroom. The kid was organized as a file cabinet and had everything labeled by date. When I had what I needed, I headed back to my office.
Did you find anything?
What were you photographing last week before the break-in?
Well, let's see. I did some portraits for my cousin, and I did a few landscapes at a few parks.
Look through these. They're from the day before the break-in. Can you find the negatives for the park shots?
Sure thing. Why?
Just find them. Here, use my magnifying glass. Look for any shots that have people in them.
Well, I was trying to avoid people. Landscapes.
Right, just keep looking.
Well, I still don't think that... Oh, wait, what's that?
What's what?
Right there, under the tree. I didn't notice before. It looks like two people. And hey, that's the guy that's been following me. But who's the other man? I can't tell.
That's all I needed to know. Go home, Mr. Gold. I'll be in touch.
Wait, that's all? What about the man that's been following me?
Don't worry, Mr. Gold. You're going to be fine. Take it easy. Just go about your business.
If you say so. Good night, Miss Baxter.
I couldn't tell the kid what was going on. It would have put him in danger. The other man in the photograph was the mayor himself, Gerald Humphries. Getting in touch with him on such short notice would have put me in a pickle, but lucky for me, I had helped the mayor out before with a small problem at City Hall. I was sure he wouldn't mind if I dropped by for a little social call.
Oh, why hello, dear. What brings you here at such an hour?
Sorry to disturb you, but I need to talk to your husband. Is he home?
He's working late tonight, sweetheart. Do you want me to take a message for you when he gets back?
I should really talk to him in person. Do you know when he'll be home?
Oh, no, that's quite impossible. He's up to the earful with paperwork and won't pop in until he's done. And after that, he'll want to eat dinner. You know my Gerald. After work, he's near starved.
Well, if that is the case, may I ask you a few questions?
Why, of course, sweetheart. You're some kind of detective, right?
Private investigator, ma'am.
Oh, dear. Is there something wrong?
Oh, not at all. Just an everyday case, nothing to worry about. Could you tell me if your husband has been doing anything different lately? Changing his routine at all?
Not that I can think of, no.
Really think hard, ma'am. This could help solve the case.
Well, now that I think about it, he has been working late a lot more than usual.
Has he been acting any differently after he gets home late?
No. But one night, after I took his coat, I found a business card in his jacket.
May I see it?
Of course. I've got it in this drawer here. I've been meaning to ask him about it. Here you are.
Thank you, ma'am. May I ask, what do you have in the oven? It smells delicious.
Oh, why, thank you, my dear. It's a cobbler.
A cobbler? You know, Mrs. Humphries, I can never get my crust to turn out right on a cobbler.
Well, you know, dear, you've always got to make sure you're using Grandma Silver's baking flour. It stays moist and flaky, guaranteed, and you can find it at any local grocer.
Well, I'll have to buy myself some Grandma Silver's baking flour. Thanks for the tip. What flavor cobbler are you baking?
Oh, well, it's blueberry. Yes, blueberry. I'm getting older. It slipped my mind for a moment.
Okay, then. I hope it tastes as good as it smells.
That's the plan.
Good night, Mrs. Humphries.
Good night, Detective.
The business card was for a pawn shop that went under last year. The store was a disaster, as though a tornado had torn through, with furniture and broken glass littering the dusty floor. A set of footprints led toward the back room. I peeked around the corner. It was the man from the photograph, the one who had been following David Gold. I made the rookie mistake of not watching my step, and the glass shards on the floor made sure I knew it.
Hey, who's there?
Hands where I can see them.
Whoa, whoa. Who are you?
Why have you been following my client?
What are you talking about?
You've been following a client of mine for the past few days. Why?
I don't have to tell you a thing.
Let me remind you who has the gun here.
Calm down, lady. I was just making sure you didn't know anything.
About your business with the mayor?
How did you... Hey, I don't know what you're talking about.
I have evidence that places you and the mayor together last Monday. What were you two chatting about?
What kind of evidence?
Next time you steal some photographs, make sure you take the negatives too.
So you found some pictures of two guys talking in a park. So what? That doesn't mean anything.
Breaking into a man's apartment tells me otherwise.
Listen, lady, you got no proof and you're not even a cop. I don't have to do anything you tell me.
That's right. I'm not a cop, but I could still shoot you, say it was self-defense.
You wouldn't.
My trigger finger sometimes slips in stressful situations.
Dame like you, I bet you've never even fired a gun.
Tell that to Archie Leach,
Whoa, the guy that bought it down at the docks last week.
the one and only.
Jeez, lady. Fine, what do you want to know?
What business did the mayor have with you?
He hired me.
To do what?
Take care of something.
If you don't start being a little more descriptive, I might just...
Take it easy. He hired me to kill his wife.
Why?
You know politicians. He found some young thing, but he can't get a divorce, not with an election coming up. It'd be easier if she had an accident, if you know what I mean.
And what kind of accident was in store for her?
Poison. Easy. No mess, no fuss.
What kind?
Does it really matter? Poison is poison.
How about a little lead poisoning?
All right. Deadly nightshade. Just got it growing like weeds in our own backyard. If you're stupid, it looks a bit like a blueberry. Now seriously, can you put the gun down?
As soon as you're handcuffed to the radiator.
You're kidding, right?
The mayor should have hired someone else. The would-be assassin was about as cooperative as a honey badger, and just about as handsome. I left it at the pawn shop and called it in at a payphone down the street. It was when I hung up that it hit me. The mayor's wife was making blueberry cobbler for dessert. I drove like a woman possessed back to the mayor's house and burst through the door just as Mrs. Humphries was putting the cobbler on the table.
Miss Baxter, what on earth are you doing here?
Mr. Humphries, don't eat the cobbler.
What?
You cannot eat that cobbler.
I don't know what's come over you barging in here.
Mr. Humphries, please listen to me.
What is the meaning of this?
Get her out of the house, Gerald. The cobbler is getting cold.
You're interrupting time with my wife and I.
If the cobbler's so important to you, why don't you take a bite, Mrs. Humphries?
Excuse me?
You heard me. Why don't you try it first? Tell your husband how the recipe turned out.
Well, I wanted him to have the first bite.
If you take a bite of that cobbler right now, I will leave and never bother you again.
I can't do that.
What are you talking about, Ellen? Just eat some of the cobbler so Miss Baxter can get to the point.
I really can't.
Why not?
Because she knows that it's poison, meant for you.
Impossible. Ellen, what is she talking about?
I have no idea.
Why would you want to kill me?
Yes, Mrs. Humphries, why would you want to poison your husband?
Well, I don't know. Oh, it's because of that woman you've been seeing. You think I don't know, Gerald? You think I'm blind? How could you? 30 years of marriage, and you threw it away for some girl barely out of high school?
Why, I never! How could you say something like that?
Because it's true, Mr. Humphries. Just admit it.
Well, all right. I may be having an affair, but I still love you, Ellen, I really do.
I don't think I can believe you.
You really shouldn't, Mrs. Humphries.
What?
I would ask your husband about how he spent his afternoon at the park the Monday before last.
Gerald, what is she talking about?
I have no idea.
You tell her, or I will.
There's nothing to tell.
I've got a man being arrested back at the pawn shop that would beg to differ.
What man at the pawn shop? Gerald, what is going on?
Nothing, dear. I'm sure it's all just a misunderstanding.
Miss Baxter, tell me what is happening.
I'm afraid your husband paid a man a significant sum of money for you to be killed, with the very nightshade you baked into that cobbler, actually.
Ellen, she's lying. I would never.
You maniac!
In the end, it took 3 officers to separate them. Mrs. Humphries had quite the swing for a lady her age. Luckily for the mayor, the cops showed up before things got out of hand. The lead detective didn't believe my story at first, but the assassin confessed in full, and there was a cobbler full of nightshade to consider. I even got David Gold to reprint the photograph for the police. There was enough evidence to put the unhappy couple and the assassin away. The Humphries were lucky no one got killed. In my line of work, I've seen it plenty of times. Couples that think their love will age like fine wine, and in the end, it turns to vinegar instead.
Good evening. Now for a quick update on the affairs of the war both abroad and at home. It has been released to the public that the Bellingham Airfield has now been officially designated as one of 12 major airfields forming the air defense of the Pacific coast. The airfield's 3 runways will be lengthened to accommodate the housing of the new P-51 long-range fighter bomber as well as a small complement of P-38 bombers. As per the recently signed Executive Order 9066, the Bellingham Airfield has been listed as an exclusion zone for citizens of Japanese descent. The siege of Leningrad continues, with more German Army Group North divisions reportedly being committed to the area after several attempts by Soviet troops to break the blockade. In the Pacific Theater, we've received a report that 3 days ago, Japanese air forces have made a surprise raid upon the Australian refueling harbor of Broome, as well as the Royal Air Force base nearby. Damage reports are still coming in, and this radio station will keep you updated as more information becomes available. We now return to the Viking Radio Theater Hour.
In the vast and inhospitable plains of the western United States, there are only two kinds of people who stick around long enough to call this godforsaken wasteland home. Those who band together to protect the common good, and those who make a living on the weaknesses of lesser men. Out here on the edge of the Sierra Nevada, the forces of good and evil, right and wrong, only bear as much force as the revolver behind them. This week, the wills of men and women are put to the test in this eternal struggle for survival. Say goodbye to the city life. Your stagecoach has already arrived in Blood Gulch. The noonday sun shone hot over the arid fields and rugged red clay which gave Blood Gulch its name. The only signs of life in this isolated town were the muted tones of piano and the grumblings of hard-worn men from behind the closed doors of the smokestack saloon. It was a joint like any other. Here, surly folks, bored youngsters, and passers-through alike could count on two things, a cold drink and a large measure of privacy. On this July afternoon, with the temperature rivaling that of Hades, an unwitting stranger failed to acknowledge the latter.
Pardon me, bartender, but is there someone here who's handy with horses? I just got in from El Dorado, and my boy is just about dead on his hooves.
The bartender gave this newcomer a once-over. He was as out of place as a petunia in a field of sagebrush, and he looked every bit as ridiculous. He was holding a gray and red plaid sport coat over his arm and wearing a white shirt, now brown from the dust of the trail. A line of dirt streaked his forehead, and his eyes glistened with the kind of ambition that accompanies youth and stupidity. "Can't say I see much sense in dragging your horse out in this heat, son. You're looking for trouble under those circumstances."
Nice of you country folk to worry and all, but it'll take more than some sun to kill a Chicago man. That horse, though, I swear the guy who sold him to me must be some kind of crook. Anyone here who could take a look at it?
The bartender gave a heavy sigh. These northern folks passing through on their way to Sacramento and Los Angeles weren't a new sight, but they could get on a man's nerves surer than anything. "Yeah, I suppose I could send Sandy your way. He knows more about horses than anyone, and—"
"Hey, Sam. A sarsaparilla with a shot for me. This heat is killer. It's gonna take us all day to get those cows back from the Sunrise Creek Basin."
"Well, if it isn't the fanciest trick shot in all of California. A shot in a sarsaparilla coming right up." The newcomer turned to find the source of the voice behind him, and was taken aback by the gorgeous young woman, a redhead with long wavy hair and striking blue eyes, who took a seat at the bar.
"And they told me there were no good-looking gals out west. Hello there, miss. Might I have the pleasure of learning your name?"
The woman looked at him, rolled her eyes, and turned back to face the bar.
"Listen, I'm flattered, but—"
"And I'm George."
"And just what might you do if you learned my name, George?"
"It'd make conversation a bit easier. Frankly, it's a challenge enough already, talking to a gal as beautiful as yourself."
"Listen, George, I'm flattered by your words and all, but I'm a busy woman and I ain't got time to play name games with some soft northern boy today."
"Here's your sarsaparilla, Miss Annabell."
"Thanks, Sam."
Annabell, eh? Pretty name. It suits you.
"Still not interested."
Suddenly, there was a smack of wood doors on walls. The saloon patrons fell silent, fixing their eyes on their whiskey glasses as three menacing figures entered and strode towards the bar. The man leading the pack rapped the counter with a bulging fist and addressed the barkeep.
"My boys and I will be having 3 glasses of 40 Raw today. On the house, of course, Sam."
The man turned and spoke to those seated in the bar.
"Glad to see so many of you fine, law-abiding citizens here in the saloon. Y'all knew Collection Day was coming. Hank, Marlowe, would you boys be so kind?"
The two hulking men who had entered with the first began walking through the bar, whisking up coins and small nuggets from the townsfolk at each table. The first man watched the progress of his lackeys with a smug grin, pushing his lank brown hair from his brow. He noticed the newcomer staring at him and scowled.
"Are you looking at me, Yank, or are you just stupid?"
Can't help but notice the badge on your chest there. Sheriff, huh? Nice. Cute title for a cute town.
Ha! Can't expect some wet-behind-the-ears northern fella to know what kind of weight I pull, huh? Let me enlighten you. See, this here's my town. Sure, we've got us a fancy hotel, a general store, a bank. Hell, we've got us a mayor and a population of some 1,000 people. But who really makes things happen here? Who makes sure that homes and businesses are safe from accidents? I'll give you a clue. You're having the pleasure of talking to him right now.
Well, I'm honored, I'm sure. Excuse me for my ignorance. I hadn't realized that this cut-rate extortion gig of yours was all that was required of town governance in these parts. I might just want to take up a town myself, if that's the case. Easier than the work I'll be doing in business in Sacramento, and a lot less oversight.
Now listen here, boy. I don't care where you're coming from or where you're headed to. When you're in this town, you pay me some respect. Hank, Marlowe, would you kindly help this man come to understand the word respect?
George felt two sets of meaty hands grab his shoulders and pull him violently from his bar stool.
Grab his wallet too, boys. We'll consider this payment towards any future offenses.
The sheriff and his men left the saloon. Sam and Annabell began to help George up from the floor.
You've sure got a knack for making people like you, George.
I can't believe it. That bum just stole my money. How the hell am I supposed to get to Sacramento with nothing but that useless horse and not a dime to my name?
Simmer down, partner. You're not dead. Traveling gets a lot harder if you are.
I'm sure you could find something to do and earn a few bucks before you go on your way. Gertie over there at the Dewdrop Inn needs a dishwasher from time to time. She'd pay you fair.
I can't believe this. You people just put up with this sort of garbage from the sheriff without so much as lifting a finger against it? I worked hard for that money, and I'll be darned if I'm going to let some pea-brained gorilla with a revolver and a couple enforcers take it without a fight.
Shh! Not so loud.
Annabell shot a look around the bar before continuing.
Sheriff has a lot of people paid off. Word gets back to him that you're planning something and you'll find a bullet in your back before supper gets served.
That's ridiculous. No one could get away with stuff like that, even out here.
Really? I'll bet you 10 to 1 he's taken your horse already.
George ran to the front of the saloon. Sure enough, the rope he'd used to hitch his horse swayed limply in the breeze. The beast was nowhere to be seen. Even his leather saddle, which had been shinier than any saddle fresh off the cattle thanks to Orville's Spitshine's premium-grade saddle polish, was gone. George shuffled back to the bar, feeling defeated.
Okay, where's the Dewdrop Inn?
Lost your steed, huh?
Yeah, and the saddle too, which I had just cleaned with a new can of Orville Spitshine's premium-grade saddle polish. Looked brand new.
Wow, I hear that premium-grade saddle polish is top-notch. Wherever did you get such a fine product?
Well, back in Chicago, you could find it at just about any local hardware store near you. But as much of a fine luxury as that polish was, it doesn't solve my problems now.
Well, get yourself a dish rag.
As Sam had predicted, Gertie was more than happy to have an extra hand on the dishes that night. The sun had set hours before, but the air which hung over the town was still unbearably hot, making the work all the more painful. Around midnight, George stepped outside of the inn, dabbing his brow with a rag. George slumped down to sit on an upturned bucket by the back door. As he did, the night's silence was broken by the crack of gunfire, and George heard a shard of metal whiz over his head just inches from where his face had been moments before. George fell to his hands and knees and scrambled back inside, locking the door behind him. The next morning, George returned to the smokestack saloon. He found Sam at the counter, wiping dust from drinking glasses and humming to himself. When he saw George, he set down his rag, shaking his head. Good boy, George. You sure got that sheriff steamed. His boy Hank just came in here looking for you. He asked me to pass along a message.
I'll bet I can guess what it's about if it has anything to do with me getting shot at last night.
Sure does. The way the sheriff sees it, you got two options. You can either apologize to him in a very public way for undermining his control, or he's going to deal with you how he sees fit. Can't say I'm surprised he had one of his boys taking a warning shot at you last night. Sounds like the sheriff's style.
You've got to be kidding me. How long have you folks been putting up with this mess?
Oh, the sheriff and his boys have been running Blood Gulch for the past 6 years or so. For the most part, they're not too much trouble. You just learn to play by their rules and stay out of their way. Everyone keeps their heads down, for the most part.
I can't stand this. So my options are to submit to that joker like everyone else in this chicken town, or wind up 6 feet under?
You could leave town.
Without a horse or any money, that's just a slower death sentence.
Well then, what's it gonna be? The sheriff will stop hassling you if you just go along and apologize.
Apologize for what? For not kissing his feet like all you sad folks? I've still got some measure of pride.
It was nice knowing you then.
Fine. The sheriff wants to play by his rules. I'll do just that.
Where the hell are you going?
To get a gun. I'm not giving up so easily.
The saloon doors opened and closed once again.
And just what do you think you'll do with that gun, city boy? The sheriff didn't get to be powerful around here just from looking mean. He's handy with that revolver of his. Have you ever handled one before?
Well, sure. I shot skeet back in Chicago at the club.
You shot what?
Skeet. You know, clay pigeons. Moving targets.
Sounds like a waste of bullets if you ask me. You can't eat clay.
I'm not planning to eat the sheriff, just to kill him, or at any rate, wing him really well.
Okay, now I really don't doubt that you're stupid.
If you see the sheriff or his goons, let him know that I want to put an end to this.
I'm not your messenger, but it looks like I might be your pallbearer. I wouldn't worry about the sheriff figuring out you're rearing for a duel. He's got eyes and ears all over this town.
Well, that'll save time then, won't it? Sam, Annabell, I'll see you later.
George managed to barter his pocket watch for a respectable 6-gun at the general store, an old Colt 45 with a solid grip and a balanced barrel. He headed to the back to the saloon and started shooting old whiskey bottles lined up on fence posts. As the sun sank into the afternoon, George heard a growing clamor in the street out front. He loaded his revolver once more and walked around the side of the saloon.
What the?
From where he stood, he could see some 200 people lining the streets of Blood Gulch. George approached a man in denim pants and a worn work shirt reclining against the wall of the saloon.
Pardon me, but what are you folks all doing here?
The man squinted at George, then gestured into the center of the street. George turned and his chest went cold with fear. There, waiting with a sly grin, was the sheriff, flanked by Hank and Marlowe.
I heard you were looking for justice, my friend. Funny how much attention the proceedings of law get from local folk around here. All for the better, I suppose. It'll save us the trouble of finding someone to witness your execution.
George steeled himself with a breath and began to walk slowly towards the sheriff.
Now, if this was Chicago and the law told me I was to be executed, I'd be inclined to go along with that. But this is the West, and the law of the gun affords me a fair fight. You and me.
Now that's a romantic notion right there. But I own this town, and I decide what's fair here.
Are you worried that your unfortunate subjects might have to see you fail? So far, you've been all talk and not much action. I'm almost starting to believe that you don't think you can take me in a fair fight. Tell your goons to stand down and put away their weapons. If we're going to duel, it's got to be between you and me. Unless, of course, you're too scared.
The sheriff snarled and spat on the ground.
Hank, Marlowe, put your guns on the ground and back off. I'm going to teach this pile of Yankee dirt a lesson. Fair and square like he wants.
The sheriff's henchmen made a show of laying their guns on the ground before stepping back towards the crowd. The sheriff turned to the people standing nearby.
Now all of you hear this. Let this boy's death be a reminder to you of how I deal with troublemakers in my town. If y'all start getting ideas, you better be ready to die for them.
The sheriff looked back to George. George's palms began to sweat, and he could feel his heart galloping in his chest.
You ready, boy? Take your paces.
George and the sheriff stood back to back and began walking in measured steps.
Someone call it!
What have I gotten myself into?
From the crowd, George heard a man's voice calling out, "On you ready? Fire!" Without thinking, George whirled around. The sheriff stared back at him, grinning like a madman some 20 feet away. They each grabbed for their holsters, but before either gun had cleared leather, a single shot ran out across the open street.
What the?
The sheriff gripped his right arm with his hand as his revolver slipped from his fingertips onto the ground. George could see crimson blood welling up from between the sheriff's clenched fingers. George looked at his own gun with surprise and froze at the sound behind him. 2 pairs of approaching footsteps. Slowly, George turned, his hands raised in surrender.
On your knees, Sheriff.
George was stunned. Annabell was walking towards the sheriff, a smoking revolver in her outstretched hands, her eyes cold and focused. Sam followed behind her with a shotgun at the ready.
I've got 5 more shots in perfect aim, Sheriff. I won't tell you again. On your knees.
The sheriff complied, his eyes wide and uncomprehending. Annabell stepped forward and pressed the hot barrel of her Smith & Wesson into the sheriff's throat. Hank and Marlowe began moving towards their weapons, which were still lying in the dirt. Sam turned his shotgun toward them with a warning. "If you value your life, boys, I'd recommend you leave those as they lie." The henchmen stepped back, eyeing Sam's shotgun cautiously. Annabell's eyes never left the sheriff's face.
All right, Sheriff. The way I see it, you've got a choice to make. I can kill you now, or you can take your worthless hide out of town along with your pet apes over there and never return. The folks of Blood Gulch have put up with your abuse long enough.
No, I can't. You can't. Let me.
The sheriff's eyes darted around, looking for any sympathy in the eyes of the townsfolk gathered, and found none. Annabell pressed her revolver harder against the sheriff's throat and leaned in so that her eyes were inches from his face.
Get.
Annabell drew her gun back from the sheriff's neck. As soon as she did, the sheriff was on his feet and running for the jailhouse with Hank and Marlowe in hot pursuit. Townsfolk watched as the three men disappeared through the jailhouse doors, then reappeared with a number of bags and toes, socks and bandanas dangling behind them. It wasn't until the three of them had scrambled onto their horses and disappeared over the horizon that Annabell and Sam finally lowered their weapons.
That's something I never thought I'd see.
Yep, good riddance to those fellows. Hey, George, you all right? George was standing open-mouthed with his revolver hanging limply in his hand.
He's fine.
Well, hey, city boy, looks like you'll be on your way to Sacramento after all.
How did you... Where were you hiding? Annabell, that shot was amazing.
Hey, Sam said I was the best. He wasn't kidding. Don't look so surprised.
But I thought you folks weren't going to risk going up against the sheriff.
We weren't about to take him on in as headstrong and as half-cocked of a way as you did. But if we could work the situation to our advantage, why not? You did a good job of distracting him.
And you were right, George. We've been putting up with that good-for-nothing sheriff for far too long. You just reminded us that we could do something about it.
So, what's going to happen to the town now?
We'll figure something out.
And that's the funny thing of living out here. You always find a way to get through things. There isn't really an alternative.
For now, let's help you get your life back in order. Sam and Annabell helped George find his wallet and some traveling gear in the jailhouse. One of the old miners ran into George's horse out beyond Rattlesnake Ravine and returned it to the town. The next day, George headed back to the Smokestack Saloon for one last visit.
Hey, Sam. I guess this is goodbye. Sacramento, here I come.
It's been nice meeting you, George. Don't get in too much trouble out there.
Oh, I think I've had enough to last me for quite a while. Have you seen Annabell? I wanted to say goodbye to her, too.
Sam, George, you won't believe it. I just got back from the mayor's office. He wants me to be the new sheriff.
Congratulations!
Oh, wonderful. It's about time we saw some good changes around here.
That's really something, Annabell. You've earned it.
Thanks, boys. Although, it'll never work.
Why is that?
Well, independent woman like myself, I'm liable to get ornery and grab power like the old sheriff. Gotta have some deputies around to keep me honest. Except there aren't any left.
You can't give up the job just because you don't have any deputies. You're perfect for it. Why don't you deputize Sam?
Take me away from my bar? No way.
That's okay. I think I know somebody else that would fit the bill. Unless he really wants to go back to boring old Sacramento.
You're sure I'm not too much of a city boy?
You are a city boy, but maybe we could use a little city around here.
With George newly deputized, the two set about training for the trials to come. Will the altruistic goals of this strong-willed young woman and her city-smart partner be able to root out the corruption which runs deeper than the veins of gold in this depraved town? Find out in next week's exciting episode of Blood Gulch.
Before moving on to our next program, we at VRTE have a short news update. The mysterious event that has come to be known as the Battle of Los Angeles, which occurred recently on the night of February 24th and the morning of February 25th, is still drawing controversy. The attack occurred only 11 days ago when the Army issued a blackout over Los Angeles due to an unidentified aircraft. The 37th Coast Artillery Brigade unloaded nearly 1,500 rounds of ammunition on a fleet of Japanese attack planes that, as the military has insisted and sometimes denounced, supposedly did not exist. Earlier today, yet another conference was held with the high-ranking members of the Army and the Navy to inquire once more if they were, as Congressman Leland Ford described it, playing us all for suckers. Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox has continued to insist that the attack was, quote, a false alarm due to war nerves. Many are reportedly having trouble accepting that the military either did not know that it was firing at nothing, or that it did not know when to stop firing at nothing. Knox reassured everyone at his conference that we shouldn't let this incident spoil our collective anxiety as a nation, and to, quote, keep the home front strong. Thank you for listening to this news update. Now, we return to our radio program.
Here to save the day, it's Sergeant U.S.A. Kids, grab yourself some of Aunt Bunnaby's frosted spam pops and sit yourself down for the new, thrilling adventures of Sergeant U.S.A. and his spectacular battles with our nation's greatest enemies. But our hero is not ready to face the evils of the world just yet. For now, he is just the mild-mannered Ulysses Scott Anderson. In tonight's fantastic adventure, brought to you by Aunt Butterbee's Frosted Spam Pops, he will transform into the terrific hero you will come to know as the one and only Sergeant U.S.A. We find our young hero walking the streets of Detroit, somewhat distraught.
Hey, watch it, kid.
Ooh, hey, you watch it. And I'm not a kid. I'm 19.
Yeah, sure. 19 pounds.
Come here, you. Yeah, run away. No parents, no job, no place to stay. My life is one big sob story. And now kids on the street are busting my chops for being too skinny.
Hey, kid, did you say you needed a job?
Huh? Who are you? And don't call me kid.
What's your name, then?
My name? It's Ulysses.
Ulysses?
You just call me Scott. That's my middle name.
Well, here's my card, Scott, if you are perhaps interested in recovering some items for me.
Sure, I'll do anything.
Good, good. What is your full name, young man?
Ulysses Scott Anderson, U.S.A. My parents were very patriotic.
Patriots, eh? And what about you, Scott? Are you a patriot?
You bet your boots I am.
Then perhaps not.
Oh, wait, don't go. You didn't give me your card. You said that you had a job for me. I need a job.
I did, but if you truly love this country of yours, then this is no job for you.
What is that supposed to mean? You ain't a patriot?
Oh, I am a patriot, just not for this country.
What's your name?
My name is Heinrich. Heinrich von Heinrichstein.
Von Heinrichstein? You don't mean to tell me that you're a
Nazi? Oh, Mr. Anderson, I have never heard such accusations.
You're a Nazi! You're trying to get me to work for the Nazis!
And what if I am?
I'll tell you what.
You'll fight me. You're hardly 5 feet tall, 100 pounds at most. You're nothing more than a little poodle. Your puny body will snap like a toothpick.
I still need to try. It's the American thing to do.
You silly Americans.
I'll show you an American.
Good day, Mr. Anderson.
The German walks off with a sinister grin. Meanwhile, our young hero Scott Anderson lies defeated on the ground, bruised and beaten, when suddenly he sees a small dot in the sky, growing closer, its valiant figure becoming more and more distinct.
What? What's that? A bald eagle? What are you doing in the city? I've seen you guys out around Monroe, but never here in Detroit. Oh, wow. I've never seen one so close before. I could almost touch you. Gee, you're so bright and glowy. Your wings. Oh, you're injured. That must be why you fell. Here, let me... Ah! Ow! Ow! You're scratching me! Oh, I was just trying... Ah! Stop it! Burn! Stop! Let go! Stop! Ah!
Our hero hits his head on a fire hydrant as he scrambles to get the mighty bird off of him. He passes out, cold and alone on the side of the road, as the bald eagle scampers off to find better food to eat. Sometime later, perhaps a few minutes, perhaps a few hours, he awakes and finds, to his surprise, his head seated in the lap of a gorgeous young woman, who dabs gently at the blood on his face with a handkerchief.
What? Who are you?
My name's Evelyn. I pulled you across the street and under this awning so we could get you dried up. It started to rain. Oh, you poor thing. You were just lying there, wet and cold, your face and hands covered in blood. I thought you might be dead. But when I saw you breathing, I thought I'd get you to someplace a little safer. Couldn't get you far, though. You were too heavy.
Too heavy? I'd never heard that one before. I knew 5th graders that weighed more than me. Even a tiny dame like you could lift me right over her head.
I don't know any woman who can lift 200 pounds.
200 pounds?
Yeah, you're what, 6 feet tall?
I'm not. Egad!
What is it?
I'm huge.
Well, you don't have to tell me that. I dragged you a good 15 yards.
No, you don't understand. I'm a wimp. I'm just a little punk. I'm just little Scott Anderson. This isn't my body.
Well, your voice is coming out of your mouth, so I'd say that it's you, Scott.
But I've never been able to lift more than 50 pounds in my life. Feel my arm.
Sir, I don't think...
Pinch me. Anything.
Oh, all right.
Ha ha! That barely hurt. This is incredible. This morning I would have bruised. The bald eagle. It was glowing. Maybe when it scratched me, it had some sort of effect on me. Huh! A radioactive bald eagle. Oh man, that Nazi's gonna get what's coming to him now.
Glowing bald eagles? Nazis? Gee, mister, you're nuts.
No. You see, that's how I ended up unconscious. I was talking to a guy in the street and I found out he was a Nazi, so I tried to fight him. He kicked my rear in a hot second. I knew he would, too. Then, after a little while, this injured bald eagle fell from the sky. Its wing was hurt. It must have been lost or confused. So I tried to help it and it started clawing at me, and then I just passed out.
And this bald eagle that supposedly attacked you, it was glowing?
Yep. Maybe it got too close to the power plant over in Newport.
And you fought a Nazi in the street even though you knew you would lose.
He's the enemy. We all have to do our part, right? I just wish I could do more. Maybe now I can.
Now, a bald eagle in Detroit, I might buy that. But a Nazi agent? Here? How?
Heck if I know, but it sounds like he's got an operation going. Something real big. I've got to go stop them.
Well, you can't do that.
And why not?
You're still injured. Your face is covered in blood.
It is? Sorry to ask, but can I borrow that handkerchief?
I can do you one better. I've got a first aid kit right here.
What, you carry around a first aid kit with you?
I'm in nursing school right now. Never can be too safe these days. Now, hold on, this might sting a bit. That's funny.
What is it?
That's so strange. I've cleaned off the blood, but you don't have any cuts on your face, not even a bruise.
Don't you see what this means? I've healed!
Well, that's impossible. If you were really just attacked a short while ago, like you say.
I was! What's your name again? Evelyn? Evelyn, a miracle has just happened, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to fight back.
Fight back? What, against this apparent Nazi that nearly beat you to death?
Yes, and any other Nazis in Detroit.
Hold on, Scott. You'll get yourself killed doing something like that.
But don't you see, Evelyn? I'm invincible!
Invincible? You've gone cockeyed. Well, if I can't stop you, I'm coming with you.
What? You can't do that.
And why not?
You're a lady. Ladies shouldn't be getting in fights.
If I can drag an enormous man like you to safety, I can fight.
You'd be putting yourself in danger.
And so would you.
Yeah, but I can handle it.
Well, how do you know that? You just said not a moment ago that you've never lifted more than 50 pounds. How do you know that Nazi won't just kill you? If you can even find him, that is.
I'll find that Heinrich von Heinrichstein and get him locked up if it's the last thing that I do. You can bet on it.
Heinrich von Heinrichstein? Are you sure you didn't just hallucinate all this?
I'm certain of it. Thank you for your help, Evelyn. I'll be sure to return your handkerchief.
You can keep it. And besides, why are you acting like you're about to say goodbye? I'm coming with you.
But Evelyn...
But nothing.
Fine. But stay behind me, all right? I don't want you getting hurt or anything, okay?
If you insist. Do you even know where you're going?
Just crossing the street back to where you found me. Maybe there'll be some clue there. See anything?
No.
Wait. I think I found something.
What is it?
It's Heinrich's business card. He must have dropped it when we were fighting.
Gee, it says right here, Heinrich von Heinrichstein. My goodness, you were telling the truth.
I told you so.
Look, it has an address here. Let's see, 19th Street?
That's not too far from here. Let's try and sneak in. Come on, this way. So, what were you doing on this side of town anyway? It's only us orphans and poor folks over here on Skid Row. A pretty lady like yourself ought to be way uptown.
I volunteer at the mission a few blocks east of here.
The homeless shelter?
Mm-hmm. Every weekend I come down here and do what I can to help. Doesn't hurt that I get to practice at nursing, too.
Do you practice nursing in those heels, too?
I know they don't look it, but these air-step heels come in handy. I got them at Saks Fifth Avenue for only $7, and they're plenty worth their money, especially when nosier classmates think they can get their feet a little too close to me.
You're still in school then, huh?
Oh, I just started, though I can't wait to be done with it. Oh, not that I don't like it. I love it. I just can't wait to get out there and really help. Oh, sure, I buy war bonds, do whatever I can to help the boys overseas, but it just doesn't feel like I'm doing enough.
I know what you mean.
Do you?
Oh, sure. I can't enlist because of my poor health. Or I guess I couldn't before. I might be able to now.
I'm still not sure if I buy this whole story. You suddenly doubling in size and strength? It's just not possible.
Here, take a look at this.
Oh, that's a cute picture. Is that your family?
Well, those are my parents, but that skinny kid right there, that's me.
Oh, you were so small back then.
Back then, this photograph was taken about 5 months ago.
5 months ago?
Yep.
I don't believe it. But it looks just like you. Well, not just like you.
Do you believe me now?
I'm a heck of a lot closer to believing you now. Can I see that again?
Hold on. I think we're almost there. Look.
That's where the Nazis are working? That old warehouse? It looks abandoned.
That's the address on the business card. But there's only one way to find out for certain. Are you sure you want to do this, Evelyn?
I'm sure.
Meanwhile, the diabolical Heinrich and his cronies cackle in their dilapidated hideout.
So I'm walking down the road when I run into this kid.
I thought I told you not to call me a kid.
What is this? Who are you?
Don't you recognize me? The Patriot Kid? Heinrich, how do you know this man?
I don't. I've never seen him here before.
Sure you have. The guy you left in the street?
No, it can't be.
It's time to get your daily serving of justice, you Nazi cretins.
You are a fool. There are 3 of us and only 1 of you.
Now, who wants to go first?
Wilhelm, get him.
Yes, Heinrich. One down. Who's going to be next?
Karl. I'll get him.
This new body sure is something.
Scott, help!
Evelyn, no!
That's right, Mr. Anderson. I've got your girl here. Don't come any closer.
Evelyn,
It's going to be okay, Scott.
But Evelyn...
Trust me.
I will go now, and you will stand there and do nothing, if you wish to keep her alive.
It's not what I'm going to do. It's what she's going to do.
And just then, Evelyn lifted her foot.
Mein foot!
I told you I wear these shoes for a reason.
Thank goodness you're safe. Nice work.
It feels good to do your part, doesn't it?
You'll pay for this, U.S.A.
Pay? Haven't you heard? America is the land of the free. You're right, Evelyn. It feels good to be a patriot. Now, we'd better call the authorities.
You were right to call us, kid. There's enough evidence in this warehouse to put these boys away for a long time. It looks like you handled it pretty well by yourselves, though.
We were just trying to do our part, sir.
Well, you certainly did it. It's not over yet, though. Our detectives have been looking through these research papers, and it's pretty evident that this is just one small fraction of the Nazi activity that's going down in our own fair city.
How dreadful!
It'll be all right, miss. We're trained for it. And you?
Me?
Yeah, you. Do you have training in this kind of thing?
Well, no, not really. I'm only 19.
That's plenty old enough to join the force.
Join the police?
You brought down a small operation on your own. It would have taken a whole team to do this.
Well, I did have a little help from Evelyn here.
Oh, not really. He did all the hard work. I hardly lifted a finger.
Well, you certainly got the job done today. How would you like to join our squad, young man? It's clear you have the training.
Really? You would give me a job?
Why, of course. With the work you did here today, we could probably promote you to sergeant. What's your name, kid?
My name? I guess you could just call me Sergeant U.S.A.
Tune in next week when Sergeant U.S.A. faces the sinister Dr. Faschistro and the crafty Luftwaffers in yet another star-spangled adventure. See you next time, kids, and remember...
If you want to be big and strong like Sergeant U.S.A., be sure to sit down to a hearty bowl of frosted Spam Pops every morning.
And that's the end of our 1940s Mystery Dinner Night broadcast. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you next month. From everyone here at Viking Radio Theatre, thanks for listening.